I'll never forget the night I accepted that babysitting job, the one that changed everything I thought I knew about reality and what hides in the spaces we don't dare to look, because I was 19 and desperate for money since my college tuition was due, and my parents had made it clear I was on my own. So when Mrs. Whitmore called offering $300 for a single overnight babysitting job, I practically jumped at the chance, even though something in her voice sounded strained, like she was forcing herself to sound cheerful when really she wanted to scream run away. But I ignored that instinct because $300 meant textbooks and groceries and maybe even a little left over for something fun, and the Whitmore estate was massive. When I arrived that evening, all Gothic spires and ivy-covered stone walls set back from the main road by at least 2 miles of winding driveway through dense woods that seemed to swallow the last rays of autumn sunlight, and Mrs. Whitmore answered the door looking perfectly put together in her designer dress and pearl necklace, but her eyes had this haunted quality, like she hadn't slept in days, and Mr. Whitmore stood behind her silent and pale, gripping a leather briefcase so tightly his knuckles had gone white, and they ushered me inside quickly, almost frantically telling me about their son Tommy, who was 7 years old and already asleep upstairs in his bedroom at the end of the long hallway on the second floor. And they showed me around the kitchen stocked with enough food for a week, the living room with its enormous fireplace and oil paintings of stern ancestors watching from the walls, and then Mrs. Whitmore grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks, and she said, "There's only one rule, just one thing you absolutely must never do." And I felt my stomach drop because the way she said it made my skin crawl, but I nodded, and she leaned in close, her breath smelling of wine and fear, and whispered, "Never look under Tommy's bed, no matter what you hear, no matter what he says. Promise me you won't look." And I promised, because what else could I do when her eyes were so desperate and Mr. Whitmore was already pulling her toward the door like they couldn't leave fast enough. And then they were gone, and I was alone in that massive house with only the sound of the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway and the wind howling outside. And I tried to watch TV, but every channel was static, and I tried to read, but the words wouldn't stick in my mind, so I just sat there listening to the house settle and creak until around midnight, when I heard it, a small voice calling from upstairs saying, "Miss Babysitter, I'm thirsty, can you bring me water please?" And I grabbed a glass, filled it with tap water, and climbed those stairs, each step groaning under my weight, like the house itself was trying to warn me away. And I found Tommy's room exactly where they'd said, the door slightly ajar with a sliver of yellow light spilling into the dark hallway, and I pushed it open, and there on the bed was a child-shaped lump under blue covers, the blanket rising and falling with steady breaths, and I set the water on the nightstand, whispering, "Here's your water, Tommy," and the lump didn't move, didn't respond, just kept breathing in that mechanical, too regular rhythm. And I backed out of the room, my heart starting to pound for reasons I couldn't explain, and I was halfway down the stairs when I heard it again, "Miss Babysitter, I'm still thirsty, I need more water please." And I froze because the voice was coming from Tommy's room, but it sounded different, this time muffled and strained, like someone talking through layers of fabric or from somewhere enclosed and tight, and every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run out the front door and never look back. But I thought of the $300 and how Mrs. Whitmore's desperation suggested they'd had trouble finding babysitters before, and maybe this was some kind of test to see if I'd stay despite weird circumstances. So I went back up, filled with false confidence, and entered the room again, and the lump on the bed was still there, still breathing in that same rhythmic pattern. But now I noticed things I'd missed before, like how the shape under the covers was too perfect, too symmetrical, like something arranged rather than a child who'd shifted naturally in sleep. And the voice came again, "Please, I'm under here, I'm scared it won't let me come out." And my blood turned to ice, because the voice was definitely coming from beneath the bed, from that dark space where dust and monsters supposedly live. And I knelt down slowly, my knees cracking, my hands trembling, and I could see in the gap between bed frame and floor just shadows at first, but then something pale moved, and I saw fingers, small white fingers, reaching toward me from under the bed. And I remembered Mrs. Whitmore's desperate plea, her one absolute rule, and I stood up so fast I got dizzy and backed toward the door. But the thing on the bed still hadn't moved, and that's when I realized, with horror crawling up my spine, that whatever was lying on top of the bed, breathing in that mechanical rhythm, wasn't asleep at all. It was waiting, and the real Tommy, if that was really Tommy, was trapped underneath. And I didn't know what to do, because checking under the bed meant breaking the one rule but leaving a child trapped under there with something pretending to be him felt like a worse violation, and the voice from below came again, more urgent now. Please, you have to help me, it's going to replace me, it's almost done learning. And I made my decision, rules be damned, and I grabbed the covers and yanked them back, and what I saw on that bed made me scream, a sound I didn't know I could make because it looked like Tommy, exactly like the photos on the mantel. Downstairs, same sandy hair, same dusting of freckles, same small nose, but the eyes were wrong, all wrong completely, black like pools of oil, and when I pulled the covers away those eyes snapped open and fixed on me, and the thing smiled with too many teeth and started to sit up with movements that were jerky and mechanical, like a puppet, and I dropped to my knees and looked under the bed, and there was Tommy the real Tommy, curled in a ball, crying silently, his pajamas dirty, his face streaked with tears, and he reached for me, and I grabbed his arms and pulled him out, and the thing on the bed made a sound like breaking glass mixed with screaming static, and I scooped Tommy up and ran. I ran down those stairs, taking them three at a time, while behind us that thing gave chase, and I could hear it moving wrong, its footsteps hitting in patterns that no human gait could match, and Tommy was whispering in my ear, it comes every night, it tries to learn me, it sleeps on top, so I have to hide underneath, and his parents knew, they knew, and still they left him. And I burst through the front door into the cold night air and didn't stop running until we reached my car parked on that long driveway, and I strapped Tommy in and drove away, tires screaming, and when I looked in the rearview mirror I saw it standing in the mansion doorway, perfectly still, watching us leave with those oil black eyes, and I drove straight to the police station and tried to explain, but how do you make people believe something like that? And by the time we got back to the estate with two skeptical officers, the house was empty, completely empty, no furniture, no pictures, no sign anyone had ever lived there at all, just bare rooms and dust, and Tommy was taken by social services, and I never got my $300, and the Whitmores were never found, no record of them existing, no paper trail, nothing. And sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that breathing rhythm, so steady, so mechanical, and wondering how many other families have that same rule posted in their homes, and how many babysitters before me looked under the bed, and what happened to the ones who didn't, and whether those things ever finish learning, and if they do, where do they go next? And I see children sometimes in grocery stores or parks, and I find myself studying them, looking for those tells, those tiny imperfections that mark something, trying too hard to be human, and I wonder if I'm going crazy, or if I'm the only one who knows the truth, that some rules exist for reasons we can't fathom, and breaking them reveals horrors we were never meant to see. But I'd break that rule again in a heartbeat, because Tommy was real and he needed help, and sometimes doing the right thing means facing the monsters that hide in the spaces under beds and closets, in the gaps between what we know and what we fear.